G'day everyone and welcome to part 3 of From There to Here, a Trek Zone Spotlight special presentation. I'm Matt Miller. Waiting for me in the LA studio is Carlos Pedraza. This time around we're going to be talking about the future of Star Trek fan films as we wrap up this special presentation. Well, Carlos Pedraza is in LA for me once again for part 3 of From There to Here, a history of Star Trek fan films, and of course focusing on that case. Carlos, thanks again for your time.
Thank you.
Now, mate, we've looked at the past of Star Trek fan films, starting out with Hidden Frontier as one of those early pioneers and Exeter, and the Axanar case in part 2. The case is wrapped now, and it's been a couple of weeks as the dust settles. What are your feelings on what's next for Axanar?
Well, they're clearly going to try to move forward under the terms of the settlement. You know, it's going to be a very different Axanar than what was promised. You know, not just in terms of the length, although that's a big part of it. You know, it was to be a 90-minute plus feature. Now it is a 30-minute short. You know, not all of the actors that were in Prelude are going to be coming back. You know, rest in peace, Richard Hatch passed away, and you know, he was a big part of what Axanar was intended to be. And there's no doubt that that's a blow to the production that they're going to have to figure out how to get around, and I can't even begin to imagine what that will look like. But you know, I think we all mourn his passing, but it is, you know, just the latest in something that's going to make that presents a challenge for Axanar as it moves forward. You know, the second challenge, of course, is money. They have none left. You know, it's the evidence that came out in the case made it pretty clear that 1.4 million was raised and more than 1.4 million was spent, and no movie was made. Now, there may be a lot of reasons for that. There are a lot of reasons for that, and Alec Peters will be the first one to tell you what those reasons are. But the fact of the matter is, 1.4, nothing made, all spent. And there's some accountability for that I think is important, and that's something that's, you know, going to continue to be an issue for Axanar as it moves forward, because it's going to have to make a case for why it deserves more money from the public. Well, technically they can't do public fundraising, but they still are making an appeal to get as many people to sign up, you know, give them their email addresses so that they can make private appeals to them. They are allowed actually an unlimited, as far as I can tell, an unlimited budget so long as it comes from private sources. So, you know, just for reference, Prelude to Axanar cost about $123,000 to make, and it was 23 minutes long, 22 minutes long, something like that. You know, if they went for something at a Prelude level, you know, it's doable. But again, they're going to have to make their case to people. And some folks are diehard Axanar supporters, and they're going to fork over even more money. And of course, that's their right. But the settlement has made it pretty clear that in terms of trying to reach out to the public, that's not supposed to happen. That's not going to happen again. With regard to Axanar, that, you know, that the use of Star Trek to bring in money is just not going to be something Axanar can do publicly anymore. So there are going to be other people on the fence, and obviously people opposed to Axanar at this point, given its history, who are going to ask questions about accountability, about how the money was spent, and essentially, why do you deserve more? Why do you deserve more of my money? People are going to ask that, and you know, Axanar is taking steps to address that. You know, they're having their financial review that's coming out. But as I've reported on AxeMonitor, the people who are doing the review are Axanar enthusiasts. Some of them cast and crew, not cast, but crew members. Others, one of them is not a crew member, but has been supportive of Axanar in the past. And I don't want to cast any aspersions on their integrity, because I think they are probably approaching their task with utmost integrity. The problem is that the task that they've been given is very carefully circumscribed, so that they're only examining a subset of Axanar's financials. Subset is not my term, that's Alec Peters' terms. He made a determination that the only money that they're going to be allowed to look at are expenses associated with the crowdfunding that they came in. Well, we know that that Alec Peters raised a lot of other money through means other than the crowdfunding campaigns. Direct donations, what they called retroactive donations, merchandise sales, personal appeals to private individuals, all of that brought in 6 figures worth more of money. We don't know how much that is. We've made some estimates. Other people have made estimates of anywhere from $100,000 to $200,000. I'm not going to, plant my flag on any particular number. My concern is that if you're talking about accountability, there is none for those undisclosed proceeds, and people deserve that. And the way that this financial review is structured, they're not going to see any accountability for anything other than the money that came directly through Kickstarter and Indiegogo. And so what that means is that there's this whole other black hole of income and expenses we know nothing about, and that these financial reviewers have not been given access to. Which they've all told me that this is the case. I asked, for example, Alec Peters has claimed that he's put in $150,000 of his own money into this, and I asked the 2 committee members that I spoke, was this accounted for in any of the records that you saw? Did you see a cash infusion of $150,000 in the records that you have? And the answer was no. And that doesn't mean it didn't happen. What it means is that was accounted for in documents or records they were not given access to. So that to me does not say independent review. That to me does not say that these are Axanar's financials. It says this is a piece of them that have been chosen very deliberately by Alec Peters. So that's where sort of this next battlefield I think is going to be, is the legitimacy of that financial review. One of the original committee members resigned just because he was concerned about a potential conflict of interest, because he was the director of photography for Prelude to Axanar and was going to be for Axanar. So, he was going to be paid for that. So the idea that he was being asked to weigh in on the legitimacy of a production from which he was eventually going to benefit was a concern, and should be a concern to the other members of the committee that are that closely associated with Axanar.
We could keep talking about this all day long, because it is an absolutely intricate web that has been weaved over the last 14 months, if not longer, since the decision was entered into Alec's mind to make a studio and break away from what made Prelude a success. I've spoken to Christian Gossett in the past as well on the Spotlight, and he shared his thoughts as well. I think that that there's Chance Encounter, a new Trek film. Intrepid are making new stuff as well. Trek fan films are going to continue. They're going to be restricted, but they are going to continue, which I think is absolutely fantastic. And to know what CBS and Paramount are happy to accept is absolutely fantastic. I think that as a filmmaker myself, it gives me the freedom to know that I can do this, not make any profit off it, but I can do it because I want to do it, and I'm not going to have any repercussions, which helps me, because that has been something that has hindered me in the past of not being able to secure actors and talent because of their concern of lawsuits and being sued for entering into a Star Trek universe and that sort of thing. Carlos, we are fast running out of time in this third part, but give us a quick 30-second recap of your thoughts of Star Trek fan films.
Well, I think there's still a bright future for them. It's a different future than we had before. I think that CBS has said that they will evaluate these guidelines again after they've been in place for a while, and I think that, good behavior on the part of fan films, may have some effect on that. I hope it does. It's the only way that there will be any change or loosening in those restrictions. But in the meantime, you're going to see creative stuff come out. Restrictions can only enhance creativity, and as long as they don't go too far. I don't think these go too far. They go farther than I would have. But, there are people still producing things, the examples you just gave, that are still high quality, still great fan films, not as long as we might want, but there's room there now, official room for fan films, should they choose to move forward. And I think that, crowdfunding being allowed, that's a big win. I think that technology for production is only going to continue to improve, and we have mass distribution in place that makes it easy to get the word out there and to get your products. I probably shouldn't call them products. To get your creations out there for a public that hopefully will appreciate them.
Fantastic, Carlos, mate. I really appreciate your time over the last 3 podcasts. It's been absolutely fascinating. Really appreciate the trip down to LA that you've made. We've just gone through this booking absolutely fantastically, and as always, thank you very much.
Well, thank you. You saved me from another day of snow up in Seattle.
Over the last 10 months, I've strived to be impartial as I produce content on Axanar, with members from both sides of the fence accusing me of one form of bias or another. Michael Hinman attempted to influence my initial podcasts with Alec, and I rejected his suggestions. Then late last year, he publicly attacked me for my interview with Jonathan Lane, claiming it was pandering to the other side in the hopes of scoring another interview with Alec. That was a baseless accusation that ultimately proved false, because Alec rejected my call for a follow-up, even victorious interview, calling me a child and threatening to sue me. TrekZone.org was launched in 2003, most likely well before Alec Peters ever conceived of Axanar and Gartha Visor. And while production really started gaining traction on the site at roughly the same time as Axanar, I still have him beat, with over 16 hours of podcast interviews and 2 hours of Eternal Night, a Star Trek fan film, actually released. But unlike Alec, I pursued my hobby for my own interests, and I continue to do that today. I don't need a full-time job from this. I have one. I need to enjoy what I do. And I enjoy this. My thanks to Carlos for flying down to LA and having a chat with me as always. My thanks to you as well for watching. You're the reason that I do this. I'm looking forward to the future here on the Trek Zone Spotlight and TrekZone.org in general. Plenty of great content coming up. You're just going to have to wait and see exactly what that is. For now though, I'm Matt Miller. Thanks for watching this 3-part special presentation.